Welcome to my Wellington travel guide. Let's jump right in. So we're going to start with where to stay. Now, I've been to Wellington, I think 3 or 4 times now. I haven't spent a whole lot of time there. I haven't lived there, but these are the areas that I found the most appealing to me and the ones that I'm going to recommend if you're planning a trip there. So just like any city, you're going to have lots of options when it comes to hotels, Airbnbs, hostels, you name it. Wellington probably has it. They've got budget options, they've got luxury options. Shop around, depending on the dates you're gonna go, is really going to determine how much your accommodation is going to be. I typically use $150 a night as a benchmark. That's for a place that's a little bit on the nicer side, and I do split those expenses with my partner because we often travel together. The first area that I would recommend staying in is the city center, specifically in Te Aro. Te Aro near Cuba Street is great for walking ability and nightlife. There's just a lot to do within a short walking distance, and this is probably my favorite area to stay in Wellington. The next is Lambton Key. I was able to find less expensive accommodation in this area, especially over the weekend, because this is the central business district and no one is really there over the weekends. It is still a really short walk into the city center, into all of the cool things you want to do in Wellington. So if you want to save a little bit of money, this might be a really good area to have your base. Lambton Key is also closer to Sky Stadium, so if you're coming for a concert or an event at the stadium, it's a little bit of a shorter walking distance. Now, in terms of staying outside of the CBD, we've only spent one night in the outskirts, and that was really close to the ferry terminal, but it was only a 20-minute bus ride into the city center if we wanted to go down and explore, which is actually quite good. I do find that Wellington has really good public transit, so if you're going to stay outside of the city center, I don't think you're going to have much problem getting in and out. Of course, I recommend if you're going to be exploring the city center a lot on your travels, stay as close as you can to that area. If you're going to be exploring different parts of Wellington outside of the city center, then of course, if you're going to book accommodation in that area, it's probably going to save you a little bit of money in transportation if you can walk everywhere. I think the next area I'd like to stay in Wellington is Newtown. Or Newtown? Is it Newtown? If it's not pronounced Newtown, let me know in the comments below. But if you guys have stayed in that area, let me know if that's a good spot to use as a base to explore things like the Wellington Zoo. Now let's talk about getting around. So we've talked a little bit about this already. If you're able to walk on foot from your hotel or accommodation, that's going to be the easiest and least expensive way to explore and get around. Wellington is really walkable and really friendly towards pedestrians. There's a lot of walking pathways and areas that connect to different parts of the city. So this is definitely perfect if you're going to be staying close to the things you want to explore. Public transit is great, and you can just pay cash fares if you don't want to sign up for a card. You can get a Snapper card if you're going to be there for a longer amount of time, but it is $10 for the card, and then you have to load money onto it separately. So if you're just there for a weekend or a few days, go ahead and pay those cash fares, even if they are a little bit more expensive than the Snapper fares. And I'll link the Snapper website and the MetLink website down below if you want to look into the transit a bit further. Uber or a taxi is also an option in Wellington. We were able to take an Uber from Te Aro up to the Mount Wellington Lookout for about $15 one way. So that's quite affordable, I would say. Of course, that depends on peak times and peak seasons that can fluctuate. Let's talk about free and cheap things to do. First one on this list is Te Papa, which is the museum in Wellington. It is free to enter and it's just incredible. This is easily the best museum in New Zealand. The exhibits are amazing, and there is actually a little rooftop lookout point on the 6th floor. Definitely go check that out if you're going to go to Te Papa. Going to this museum is a great way to spend a rainy morning or afternoon or even a full day. I really enjoyed the Gallipoli exhibit on our last trip and highly recommend checking that out if it's still there when you go. I'm pretty sure it's a permanent exhibition, but next is the Wellington Botanic Gardens. Again, this is free to do. Most cities in New Zealand have a botanic gardens that you can just walk around and explore. I recommend taking the Wellington cable car up to the top and then exploring them on the way down. This area is enjoyable in all seasons, but it was particularly beautiful in the spring with all the fresh flowers and blooms. There's a cute little gift shop up at the top with a walkway that overlooks the beautiful gardens. This is definitely something to check out if you enjoy going for nice scenic walks. Next is the cable car. Like I mentioned before, you can take the cable car up to the top of the Botanic Gardens and then walk down. So that ride to go one way from the bottom to the top is $6 per adult. This is a nice cheap attraction. You can go up. The ride is really fun. You go through this really cool light tunnel, and then when you get to the top, there is a free cable car museum and a little cafe if you wanted to grab a bite. You can also grab a free shuttle to Zealandia from here. I haven't personally been to Zealandia, but I've heard only good things, so check into that if it's something you want to do. I believe it's around $40 a person. The views at the top of the cable car are just stunning. You get that iconic view of the cable car with Wellington in the background, so it's a perfect place for photo ops. There's also some cool Lord of the Rings memorabilia in the cable car structure at the top of the hill. Next is the City Gallery Wellington. This is the free art museum that has the really giant hand sculpture on top, which is a little bit scary, but also really cool. I didn't have time to go and check this out, but I'm sure it is incredible. It has great reviews online. If you don't want to go inside, there is a really nice area on the outside of the building that you can just chill. There's this huge spherical sculpture that's suspended in the middle of these buildings. It's a really cool spot to just walk around. Next is Cuba Street. This is a really fun area just to walk up and down. There's so many shops, restaurants, bars, cafes, everything. The one thing I will say is do not go to Lord of Fries because we went there and it was horrible. Highly do not recommend that. There's also lots of photo opportunities down Cuba Street, including this cute giant umbrella and the famous bucket fountain. Definitely a must-see when you're in Wellington. Next on the list is Duck Island. So this is some iconic ice cream in New Zealand. Personally, I think it is the best ice cream in New Zealand, but leave me a comment down below if you have a recommendation for a better one, because I'm sure that there are tons I have not tried. It's $7.50 for a single, which is 2 scoops, and you do get to mix the flavors if you want. I think that price is well worth it considering the quality of the ice cream. Mount Victoria is another iconic spot and a must-do when you're in Wellington. You can walk up here or do what we did, take an Uber to the top and take in the spectacular views of Wellington and the harbor. This is the perfect spot to watch the sunset. I will mention an extra tip here. It can be really windy at the top of Mount Victoria, so I do recommend bringing a windbreaker and a raincoat actually to Wellington anytime you go, just in case the weather shifts and you need to throw on an extra layer. Next is to walk the waterfront or the wharf area. There's beautiful pathways all along the waterfront, and there are shops, there are restaurants, there are cafes. Sometimes you'll see food trucks and live music. The pathway is actually quite large, and there's space for bikes and rollerblades and people with strollers to move about freely. It's a really fantastic spot to explore on a nice day. You'll see public art down here. This is also where you see the Solace in the Wind statue of the naked man with his arms out, and then the Wellington sign is really close to that too. There are museums down this way as well. The Wellington Museum is another great free thing to do in the area. Next on the list is Weta Cave. So you can go to the Weta Cave for free. You can explore the outside where you have the big giant trolls from the movies. You can go inside and look at all the cool memorabilia. They also have all these different little rooms of things that you can buy, but you can also just look at. If you don't want to spend the money to do the full tour, which starts at $50 per person, you can just come and explore the building and the cave. It is honestly worth it. It's about a 30-minute bus ride from the city center. And I would say it's a must-do if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. Another bonus tip is to go to the Wellington Airport if you're not flying in and out of it, because you can see Gandalf here riding the giant eagles for free. You can just go into the airport and check that out. It's really cool. So in the same thread of things to do in Wellington, I'm going to add a few things onto this list that are not budget options. These are ones that are going to cost you a little bit more money, but if you're interested, I think it's well worth it. So the first one is craft beer. Wellington is the craft beer capital of New Zealand, and there are so many amazing craft breweries in the area. There's quite a few within walking distance downtown in the city center, in Tearo, and some of the surrounding neighborhoods. You could totally make a full day of this, or if you want to be more budget friendly, you can do 1 or 2 and just get a half pint for around $7. Some of my favorites in Wellington include Mean Doses, Fortune Favors, and Heyday Beer. There's some really funky and weird beers to try in this area, and I honestly love that craft breweries just always have something different on the go. Garage Project is another great mention because it is one of the more well-known breweries in New Zealand, and definitely worth a visit to their brewery and the tap room, which are just across the street from each other. They have a lot of very interesting things going on, and it's kind of an iconic place if you're a craft beer fan. Next is events. You can splurge and attend an event in Wellington, like a concert, a sporting event, or a social event at places like Sky Stadium. There's also really nice theaters like the St. James Theatre if you're coming to see a play or some kind of act. I really think there's no shortage of things to do in Wellington, and planning your trip around an event could be a really great way to see the city, but also get that experience of going to an event. And like I mentioned earlier, I haven't been to Zealandia, but that's something I'd really like to check out on our next trip there, as well as the Wellington Zoo. Both of these places have amazing reviews online and look like a ton of fun. And I think next time we go, those are both things we're going to check out. I don't know how much the zoo is, but I'll put it up on the screen here. I imagine it's probably around $40 per person. Honestly, there's probably so much more to see and do in Wellington that I did not touch on, but I do hope this video gives you a better idea of the things that you might like to do on your trip, and hopefully it helps you plan your trip to Wellington. If you're from Wellington or you've been there lots and have a few things to add, please leave a comment down below to let other people know what you would recommend. I really appreciate the feedback and the help with these kinds of videos. And thank you so much for watching this. I've had such a good time because I love Wellington so much. It is my favorite city in New Zealand. I always look forward to going back. And if you enjoy Wellington and coming along for adventures, check out these vlogs of us in Wellington.